I wanted to get started today talking about something that, if you follow me on social, you know I talk a lot about these two particular topics. And we've touched on this actually in the past on the podcast, but it's just the overall attack on feminism, and to really hone in on a story this week that was in the New York Times. It's a conversation that some of the current politicians have sort of tossed some support out there for, but obviously not gone full steam ahead after, and that is women's voting. The SAVE Act is something that is a very controversial situation going on in politics right now, because a lot of married women would be directly affected by the SAVE Act and would essentially be ineligible to vote. And there's a story in the New York Times this week regarding trad wife influencers who are advocating for household voting or head of household suffrage. So the core argument is that a family should function as a single unit with one collective political voice, of course, typically exercised by the husband. It obviously has been gaining some traction over the past couple years. It's a small subsect of people, but as all these things do, they start small and grow into big movements. It's the biblical patriarchy arguments, based obviously on religion, interpretations of headship, a godly household. The husband is the spiritual and legal head. Therefore, the wife should defer the judgment in the voting booth to ensure that the family remains unified. Now, of course, the main critique of this is, well, what the fuck do women who aren't married do? And it is a criticism of feminism because it promotes the family unit over what is considered radical individualism. Now, listen, I know there are plenty of people, mostly the majority, who do not agree that the household should have one vote. But I am finding this constant drumbeat of trad wife propaganda and this output of topics surrounding women going back in the kitchen and women having too many rights and women having too much to say and women having independence has led to the deterioration of the family units and the birth rates dropping, which we talked about last week. And it's always about how women having more autonomy has deteriorated the family, and not any conversation about the responsibility that men have in this situation, with the birth rate dropping, with politics getting to the space that they are, with the family unit not being as important. It's all on women. And trad wives, to me, and the push of it and the movement of it has been a slow trickle of propaganda over the past couple years, which I have watched. We had a conversation about this on the podcast a while ago about the idea of being a traditional woman and that flying in the face of feminism and just the constant back and forth about what women's roles are. And I told this story, and I'll tell it again if you hadn't listened to it, but I have a deep admiration for women who have a specific goal in their life and they achieve it. For example, to me, one of the most successful people that I know personally is my older sister. She got married very young to the first man that she ever dated. She had her first kiss on the altar. They have been together for, I don't want to short them, but I'm going to say 36 years, I think, somewhere around there. Over 30 years. They have 5 children together, 2 grandchildren. All of their children have graduated college. They've done it. Like, she was a wife, a mother, and she raised her children and has had a wildly successful life based on the goals that she had for herself. And I deeply admire that. And it took great dedication and great sacrifice. And of course, a little luck along the way, health and other things. But they are an incredible example of family and an incredible success story. And I think the world of it. And I love that she was able to choose that life and able to execute it. Simultaneously, I could not be more opposite of that. Obviously, anyone who's ever followed me, if you don't have to look very far to see that that has not been my life path. But my sister is proud of me. She supports me. She is a good Christian woman, which we'll get to in a second. And she She lives her life that way and views me as a success in that I did what I wanted to do. And the entire idea of feminism and the entire idea that the trad wife is the better option or the real option for women is incredibly frustrating to me. And the word feminism is constantly co-opted and morphed into this anti-men, men-hating movement. And it's like, just because you're a feminist and you think that you should have the right to vote does not mean that you hate men. The two are not simultaneous. You can exist as a person, as a woman, and live your life and want rights for yourself without hating men. It's not an attack on men. It's not an attack on the family. Everyone doesn't want the same thing. And when it comes to men, they're afforded that right. They're afforded that freedom. And it is not a default that they're somehow disregarding their life's purpose if they don't become a husband, if they don't become a father. Now, maybe their family or their mother might be disappointed because they don't have grandkids, but they are in no way viewed the same way. And they're certainly not held to a standard of deteriorating society for not wanting it. And so this trad wife thing is just exhausting, because every time you're critical of this type of extremism where you wouldn't have a right as a citizen to vote because you are a household vote, while I understand it is extremism, these are the seeds that build towards the bigger movements. There is no denying that there is an attack on women's rights right now. Everything that all of our leaders are talking about is about rolling back the progress that we've made. And when it comes to voting, which is a whole, larger conversation, I find it incredibly frustrating that women have only had the right to vote since 1965. Now, keep in mind, before you fact checkers start running off to Google, I'm aware that the 19th Amendment happened in 1920. That is women's right to vote. But I don't consider anything a right until everyone could vote, and black women couldn't vote until 1965. So I'm unconcerned about that change. It happened in 1965. That was 61 years ago. Okay? That was not that long ago. And we are already having people who are putting together movements and are advocating for women not being able to vote. So when people accuse me of being radical, or people are exhausted about feminists talking about oppression and suffrage and rights and saying that women are not equal and that women haven't gained complete autonomy, it's because we're still having conversations about this, even though it is a constitutional right for women to vote. There are permeating ideas from the church, from certain political organizations, from aspiring politicians, from pundits, that women should not have a right that they've only had for 61 years. And it is so frustrating to me. And I know, like, people always joke about, oh, I should have been born in this era. Nope. I was born the exact year to date that I was supposed to be born in. If I was in any other time, they'd have been sending me back. Okay. I'd have been in a facility or burned at the stake. I was born at the exact time I was supposed to be born in, because I was born in the only time in history in this country where women have any level of autonomy over their body, over their ability to start a business, over their ability to leave unhealthy relationships, for their ability to speak on their own, to aspire to corporate positions or positions of power. All of those things have existed only in my lifetime. My mother wasn't afforded those things. My grandmother wasn't afforded those things. My great-grandmother, my aunties. I am living not even the wildest dreams of women that came before me, because they couldn't even imagine that this was possible. And I'm only 39 years old and they're already tripping. And again, I don't want to make too big of a deal about some pilgrims in some bonnets talking about how they're okay with their husbands being the ones to vote for them. Do what you need to do, bitch. Okay. If you want your husband to run your vote up for you, you do that. By the way, that's voter fraud. So just don't vote and your husband's vote will count. But the idea that this is the traditional way of doing things, that this is how society functions, as if men aren't still in control and making the decisions that are deteriorating society, is crazy to me. I'm just tired of it. And again, there's no new feminism. There is no modern feminism where men are the enemy. If we're still having conversations about women having autonomy over their bodies, women having to get on Zoom calls while they're in labor about whether or not they have a right to a C-section or natural birth, when we have people advocating for household votes, I don't want to hear about how the feminist movement has changed. It's still just fighting for the core principal values of equality, of political, social, economic rights that are barely existing now, have barely existed at all, and they're already trying to roll back. So I don't care if you want to be a traditional woman. I encourage it, in fact. If that is the life that you want to live, you have the choice to live that. You're welcome on behalf of the giants whose shoulders we stand on, who fought for you to be able to do that. And if you want to leave that man after he has abused you, guess what you have a right to do because of those women? Leave and take your children and go to a safe space. You have every right to be a traditional woman and give up every part of your existence if that's what you want to do. And by the way, you don't have to do that. You can be a traditional woman and still have your autonomy. You can still be a wife and mother and still have your autonomy. And everyone else has the right to make their choices too. And voting is something that we will talk about a lot this year. It's something I'm very, very passionate about. Nothing will put me in a bad mood more than having a conversation with somebody who doesn't vote. And when it comes to women, these women suffered. They were abused. They were jailed. They were tortured here in this country, fighting for the right for women to be considered citizens in the United States of America. And it only happened in 1965. It is 2026. Get a fucking grip. When we talk about, oh, your ancestors fought for this, dog, it was like your aunt, okay? It was not fucking 500 years ago that this happened. It wasn't that long ago. My mother was born before this happened. And she's kicking it, all right? We're going to Dublin for St. Patrick's Day and shit. Get a grip. They put tubes down women's throats in prison, force feeding when they were protesting, so that you could walk your ass into a voting booth and say what you want for your future and for your children's future and for your parents' lives, like all of the rights that you vote for the fucking infrastructure and whatever it is that's on the ballot. They did that for you. I don't want to hear no shit about a family vote. I'm really tired of it. I'm tired of women holding up the patriarchy with their bony backs. Let it go, sis. Mind your fucking business. If you want to do that, do that. There is no holiness. There is no glory in oppressing other people. People fought and died for these rights. They were abused and jailed and beaten and ridiculed and thrown out into the street and excommunicated by their families. Do what you want to do. But to sit there and talk about these type of movements as if they're anything other than a religious psychosis, which is the principle of what our country is built on, separation of church and state. It's not a moral thing you're fighting for. It's a religious idea that men are inherently better and deserve more than women. And I am exhausted with having to constantly talk about this because I do sound obnoxious, but I don't care. I do not care. We are the first generation of women who can exist without legally needing men to survive. It's been like 3 years and you bitches are already trying to run it back. And I speak to the women particularly because In order for oppression to exist, you have to have some cooperation from the oppressed. And these women position themselves as if they're doing some great sort of duty. And the reality is you're suffering as well. You're just not suffering as much as everyone else that you're forcing into your lifestyle. There is no scientific basis for this. There is no base of reality where women are less than men, incapable of making better decisions than men, more emotional than men. So let's just get a fucking grip. Can we have 5 more minutes with our rights before we start talking about family votes?